Good evening, everyone. We'll now call the Committee of the Whole meeting of Monday, February 10th, 2020, to order and request everyone turn their cell phones off for the duration of the meeting. And please note that Councillor Bush is participating in this meeting remotely. We'd like to call for declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act with respect to the agenda for this meeting. Hearing none, we'll move on. We have no delegations this evening. We have no presentations this evening. We have no public notices this evening. And as I understand, our first agenda item under staff reports, Mr. Peacock isn't able to be with us this evening, so we will have him present his staff report at a future meeting. So with that, I'd like to ask the Fire Chief, Chief Grimwood, to present his staff report. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. If I can indulge you for a minute of time before I get into my annual report, I'd like to introduce three of our new staff members. They were able to join us tonight. Kent Reedman is our new Deputy Chief, started last week. Kent was most recently the Fire Chief for the town of Marathon. He has an extensive fire service background, though, covering training, fire prevention, health and safety, and operations. Dexter Hoopy joined us about 3 weeks ago as a training officer. Dexter was one of our work experience firefighters. He's graduated from the Confederation College firefighting program, has all of his NFPA certifications, and was actually invited back to Confederation College as an instructor. So he has an extensive training background. And Liz Godden started January 6th with us. So Liz is born and raised in Dryden, was working as a nurse until she was hired with us. She's been a firefighter for 2 years. So she brings a healthcare background to the new health and safety coordinator role. So Liz is coordinating health and safety for the city of Dryden, as well as the fire department, as well as working as a frontline firefighter for us. So very happy to have a team in place. Finally, it's been a bit of a long 6 months, but we have an exceptional group and an exceptional group of firefighters that we're working with. And one of our firefighters, Dave DePasquale, is here tonight as well. So this is a great opportunity for me to present our 2019 annual report. It's, to me, the biggest value of the report is that it gets released publicly. I always like to open the doors of the organization to members of the public. Ultimately, they fund our service and they're the end users of our service. So I like to be totally transparent with them about what types of service we provide and what type of value that they get. 2 years ago, the province put into place new regulations on public reporting for the fire service. They were since repealed. They were repealed so that some of the data that was going to be collected could be fixed. We're confident, though, that that public reporting regulation is going to come back into play, and this report in this format would meet that legislative requirement. So getting this report prepared in this format out to the public, we're actually a bit ahead of the curve. So I won't walk you through the entire report, but I would like to hit on a few of the highlights. So I'm on page 3 of the report. In 2019, even in the absence of a fire prevention officer, we had a pretty robust fire prevention program. During Fire Prevention Week alone, we had 215 hours of time by our volunteer firefighters to visit each of the schools and promote fire safety. We hosted a council workshop with the members of council and senior management team, which I think went a long way to developing an understanding of some of our regulations and requirements. We put into place the reorganization, although some of the hiring didn't happen and the staff didn't start till 2020. It was an initiative we undertook in 2019. We delivered approximately 1,500 hours of training to volunteer firefighters, which is admirable because they do it nights and weekends. They do it in addition to their regular work. Promoted 2 firefighters to captain, completed a new emergency plan that came to council, and we placed into service new patient care equipment so that we're more effective on first response calls when the ambulance happens to be delayed. We also, I'm skipping a few, but we implemented new incident command training and processes that make our firefighters much safer on the fire ground, improved processes and guidelines related to accountability, entry control, and managing incidents. And number 13 is very important because firefighters have been found to have a much higher than average rate of developing cancer. ostensibly because of all of the contamination of the bunker gear and the respiratory hazards. So research has shown over the last few years that the sooner we can get the contamination rinsed off and washed off of the bunker gear, the better it is for our firefighter health and safety. So we've now implemented programs where we start that decontamination at the scene, and now we have the right equipment at the fire station to do it. So our firefighters for generations now are going to be that much safer. On page 6, there's a breakdown of our call volume. We had an 8.5% increase in call volume, 2019 over 2018, which is about normal. The industry average is anywhere between 5 and 8%, so we're a little above average in terms of the volume increase. On page 7, you'll see the distribution by type of incident. There's nothing anomalous there. This is pretty consistent with past years, pretty consistent with other fire departments. We're not noticing any trends where one specific call type is higher than we would have anticipated it to be. On page 8, there's some information showing the division of incidents by month and day of week. Again, there's nothing anomalous there, but we do look for certain trends. The average response time for a fire truck to arrive in the city of Dryden was 8 minutes and 31 seconds. That's very impressive for a volunteer organization. So that is the time, from the time we're dispatched until the first truck is physically at the scene. So that means the firefighters are leaving the hall in around the 4 or 5 minute mark and arriving 3 or 4 minutes later. On page 9, the distribution by time of day, and again, nothing anomalous there. And we're doing fairly well in meeting the NFPA 1720 rural standard. So the NFPA standard is 6 firefighters on scene within 14 minutes 80% of the time, and we were 6 firefighters 14 minutes or less 78% of the time, so we're right there. And our staffing levels were lower last year. We're in the process of recruiting firefighters, so with a few more firefighters on board, I'm confident we'll meet that. Page 10 is a bit of a description of the structure fires within the city last year. Again, the number of structure fires and the fire loss, there's nothing concerning there. You did have one large commercial fire prior to my arrival. That was probably the biggest fire. There were several other structure fires that Dryden responded to outside of our area to assist either Oxdrift or Wabigoon. So the firefighters themselves are busier in terms of the actual firefighting than you see there. Page 12 and 13 goes through some of the various training that the firefighters undertook, and some of the training that we tried to do at the end of 2019. Again, there had been a little bit of a gap there, so we were very aggressive in October and November. We took on some pretty complex and pretty technical training, including an entire day of ice rescue, which is highly complex, highly dangerous and technical training, and we started training our firefighters on managing a mayday, which is some training that they had never previously had, which is how to execute a firefighter rescue when a firefighter becomes entrapped, entangled, or otherwise unable to escape a fire. Our fire prevention efforts on page 15 were limited because we did not have a fire prevention officer in place. We did meet our minimum requirements for completing request and complaint inspections. Once a fire prevention officer is hired, we'll be able to be more aggressive, get out and start doing more proactive inspections. But the public education program was incredibly strong, and that's because of the dedication of the firefighters. This is, I have yet to see volunteer firefighters come out and give up time during the day during Fire Prevention Week to visit schools like we saw in Dryden. It was absolutely incredible. So because of their dedication, the fire safety messaging within the city is very strong. Page 17, 18, and 19 just describes a bit about our fleet, facilities, and equipment. We have a good partnership with other city staff. Public works staff do our frontline fleet maintenance and work very well with us. Pam Skillen assists us with facilities projects. And then we had a pretty good year in terms of acquiring new equipment and moving some equipment initiatives forward. And then pages 20 and 21 are just some pages from the council workshop, which again, to this day, I still get great feedback from the firefighters on that. And I think page 22 is probably the most important because it establishes, and I've been a fire chief now for 12 years, and every year I do this report, and I do it a bit in the same format. A look back, some numbers and statistics, but I always end with the year ahead because I think it really sets the organization on the right foot heading into a new year. So our objectives this year, we've just closed advertising for a firefighter recruitment drive, and we're happy that we received over 20 applications. So that's very healthy. It's a sign of a healthy organization that people want to join. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to work with Human Resources to conduct the testing and the interviews with the hopes of getting the new recruits starting their training in March. We're already well underway in the process of completing the replacement of the pumper truck at Hall 2. I had brought a report to the previous council meeting. Since that time, we were able to send Kent Dexter and a captain and Dave from Hall 2 went out to Winnipeg to Fort Garry to actually spend the day going through the truck, sizing, looking at all the different options and itemizations that are going to be required. So that's moving along well. We're going to look later this year to implement a residential smoke and carbon monoxide alarm inspection program where firefighters actually go door to door, knock on doors and offer to check people's smoke alarms. I mean, I think the smoke alarm message is there, but most often people just become busy or forget about the little things like pushing the button and checking the alarm. So that program will allow us to go into people's houses, check the alarm. If it needs to be replaced, we'll replace it on site. If it's simply a battery issue, we'll replace the battery on site. And it also gives them that frontline interaction with their local firefighters, which is so important. We have hired the training officer, and we're looking to complete the hiring of fire prevention officer by the end of the second quarter this year. A really important initiative that's near and dear to my heart is developing a critical incident stress peer support team. Firefighters often see some pretty terrible things in their line of work and need the right resources after a call to be able to diffuse and debrief and seek the right psychological support. Liz and I have already met with the mental health team from the Dryden Regional Health Center, and we're looking at a partnered approach with the hospital, police, EMS, and our other local partners. So that's an objective or an initiative that's well underway. We're in the process of replacing our self-contained breathing apparatus, implementing a formal training program where we're going to look to get our firefighters certified to NFPA standards. That certification process can now be done in-house. My background is I'm a provincial evaluator, so I can't evaluate my own department, but I have the right resources to bring somebody in. So none of the firefighters are going to have to leave the city of Dryden to do it. We'll bring somebody in, and they'll be able to complete that. We're looking to update and modernize operating guidelines so that they've stayed current with modern fire science, tactics, and trends. Develop community partnerships. I really believe that there's a lot of available partnerships in the community. I mean, the residential smoke and carbon monoxide inspection program is a great example. In my previous municipality, we had a local hardware store donate us smoke alarms and batteries, and then we went out and did the smoke alarm program, and whenever somebody wasn't home, we left a door knocker with that business's logo on it saying, sorry we missed you, hopefully when you get home you'll check your smoke alarm and ensure it works. So, I mean, simple community partnerships like that I think are definitely available. We're going to look to better utilize media and social media to get the fire safety message out. Once a fire prevention officer is on board, implement a formal fire safety inspection program that starts doing proactive inspections. We're going to complete all of our emergency management training, certifications, exercise, and we're going to be compliant in 2020 with the provincial requirements. You have my word on that. And develop a long-range fire department work plan that updates our establishing and regulating bylaw and looks at our core services that we provide to ensure that all of our legislative requirements, bylaws, and policies meet the requirements of the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. A lot of times fire departments do really good frontline work, but some of those administrative details tend to lag behind it. And I've noticed that that's something that needs to be addressed here. So it's a very aggressive work plan, but I feel that we've got the right team in place, and we're off to an excellent start in 2020. So we're looking forward to completing it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the chief?
So happy Roger had the foresight to hire you. It's very impressive what's going on here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo those that comment, and Kent, Dexter, and Liz, thank you for joining the team. Much appreciated. I know you'll raise the level of quality service because I know that fellow, from what I've seen of him and heard from others, he's a professional, and it really is going to help the community in terms of safety and fire prevention. So thank you. And I just had one question. I was thinking on page 6, you were mentioning how it's kind of standard that you'll have these increases every year in the response, the number of calls. Why is that?
Well, each one has its own reason. So, and we look at that. We ask ourselves why. Motor vehicle accidents actually increase not because there's more motor vehicle accidents, but because of the prevalence of cell phones. As crazy as that seems, what we notice is now it's very easy for somebody to drive by, see a car in the ditch, not stop and call. So we find we're getting dispatched, not just us, police, fire, and EMS, to an increased number of motor vehicle accidents that aren't necessarily severe accidents, but they're ones that are just reported as a single vehicle that slid off the road. Fire alarms, we're noticing an increase in false fire alarms because these systems are all older, the buildings are getting older, and the fire alarms tend to reach end of life. And the emergency medical assistance calls, there's all kinds of reasons for that, but sort of big picture, people are living longer, aging in place, they're at home as opposed to in the hospital, it's difficult to get into long-term care. So all of those factors, plus the increased EMS call volume, that ends up spilling over into the fire department, which I say spilling over, it's not a negative thing. I mean, I think we're providing an exceptional service. When somebody calls for an ambulance, ideally, the ambulance is in Dryden and they're getting it right away. But in the event that they're not, I mean, our fire department alone, we have five paramedics and a nurse on our fire department. So in-house, we're able to provide a lot of good first aid and patient care training to our firefighters, who in turn are providing that service out in the community. So that's our 3 biggest call volume drivers and the 3 reasons that they seem to be increasing year over year.
All right, thank you.
Just, honestly, this report is fantastic. I've went through it twice actually, and I sort of can't wait for the next council training that you put on, because I enjoyed the first one, and I think that with the team that you have now, it's going to be even better down the road. So good on you, good on your team. Everybody's doing a fantastic job, and full disclosure, Liz is my daughter, and I'm so proud of her for doing what she does. And thank you for on her own merit, she's done a fantastic
Absolutely.
job. But I'm really glad that she's on the fire team and helping you, or you working with her, I guess. So thank you very much.
Chief, absolutely excellent report. Laid out fantastic. I really like the layout of that, and it makes me feel really good to realize that we're under the 9-minute response time. That is simply outstanding. I'm glad to see you're addressing the issue of stress in the fire department. That's very important to our crews, that they have somewhere to go if they have needed that. It's been a problem in Dryden for lots of years.
And it's particularly challenging here because of the lack of local resources in terms of clinical psychologists and psychologists with first responder experience. They typically only practice in larger cities. So, but the great thing about that program is we've already started as a partnership, not a silo, and that Liz deserves all the credit for that. She used her contacts at the hospital, put us in the right contact with the right people, and it's been a partnership right from the beginning, which is the only way to succeed.
Super. Thank you.
No, I'm just reiterating what the remaining councillors have said, that the report certainly gives proof you and your team are giving 100% in keeping our community safe. Like Councillor McKinnon has said, Marty McKinnon is, it's great to see, and it's kind of, when you say 8 minutes, it doesn't sound like that much time, so it certainly is very impressive that you're able to get to a fire in that amount of time, and certainly that everyone in our community appreciates the fact that you can do that. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.
Councillor Bush.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, through the chair, Chief Bridwood. Just like to welcome on my behalf all of your new recruits. You've got an excellent team there, and no doubt in my mind that this is the strongest team that I've seen in the Dryden Fire Department probably forever. And to Roger, think putting health and safety in the fire department as well has just been an excellent move, and it allows us to do so many more things and respond to so many more things in a timely manner, and have the focus where it needs to be. So just welcome everybody. One question, and it's kind of an unfair question, but because I know you've been so involved in, first of all, getting oriented yourself and building your staff, but just wonder at some point, maybe in the future, maybe sometime later in the year, you might be able to provide some commentary on a September 2015 Ontario Fire Marshal report that the city received. And that report, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it had a number of recommendations and actions in it that both the fire department and council were responsible for. So that's something that I just wouldn't mind seeing something on later in the year at your leisure.
Thank you. Through the chair, I am familiar with that report. I'd be happy to circle back with council. It is what drove number 12 in the objectives, which is an updated core service review and establishing and regulating bylaw. Those were the two key recommendations. And then the other bylaws and policies fall out of that. So we certainly plan on addressing it. It is, try to be sensitive to how to say this, but it was left mostly undone. In fairness, there is an awful lot of work there. I want to be totally transparent with it. To solve all the recommendations, you're probably looking at the next 12 to 15 months. The key ones, though, will be done this year, without a doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'd just like to thank Chief Grimwood for the fantastic report. I'd like to thank him for his leadership in the fire department, his professionalism, integrity. It's been a real pleasure to have Chief Grimwood on with us here at the city. And I know that our new faces at the fire department are just going to add to that strength. And our existing volunteer pool, the fire department is in great hands. Thank you.
I agree with everything that's been said, Chief. I do have a question, and I'm glad to see in the report that you're looking to the future and you're indicating what certainly is on the horizon for the fire department. I have a question, and as you're well aware, you touched on it briefly, an aging population in the community, and certainly in the area, and there's pressures on our population. I think the age in place, age at home. I'm often concerned about fire prevention for those folks. Do you know of any programs or any outreach that happens either through service providers or fire departments that would help with those folks?
Excellent question. And through the chair, yes, there are many, many fire prevention programs focused specifically towards seniors. So those are the types of programs that we would be looking to implement. We've already, as part of our vulnerable occupancy inspections towards the end of the year, we developed a good relationship with Princess Court Patricia Gardens, if I got that right, where we've actually been invited now to sit on their regular steering committee. So we're starting to address not only the physical fire safety issues within the building, which is what was always done, but now start looking at fire service, fire safety messaging towards their population.
Thank you, Chief. Again, welcome to our new folks, and congratulations, Chief, on a great fire service, well done report, and please pass on our thanks to all the volunteers as well.
I will. Thank you very much.
Moving on, Ms. Eiler, present her staff reports.
Yes, good evening. I have 3 reports to present this evening. The first is a report asking Council to authorize the additional closure of municipal offices and facilities over the Christmas and New Year's period. Would involve the closure of offices and facilities all day December 29th and 30th and the morning of December 31st. To allow for a closure from noon on December 24th to January 1st inclusive. And as January 2nd and 3rd are weekend days, the offices and facilities would reopen on Monday, January the 4th. As is stated in the report, affected employees would need to set aside 2.5 days of vacation, lieu time, overtime, or unpaid leave to cover these days. And as done in previous years, we bring this report early in the year so that employees should still have time to plan their time off accordingly. And I would just ask if there are any questions or comments on this report.
Hearing none, we'll move this to our next regular meeting.
We'll bring a motion to the 24th, yes. Thank you. Okay, the second report is sticking with the Christmas theme. Staff is asking council to determine which days it would like to hold the Committee of the Whole and council meetings in December. The council meeting would normally be held on the fourth Monday of the month, but as that is December the 28th, then offices and facilities will be closed, and some members of council will be on vacation. Staff would recommend a change to the meeting date. Currently, the Committee of the Whole meeting is scheduled on the second Monday of the month, which is the 14th. But in order to accommodate both the Committee of the Whole and a council meeting, we're recommending moving the Committee of the Whole to December the 7th and the council meeting to the 14th, which would allow a week between the meetings for the preparation of motions and bylaws for the council meeting.
Questions or comments?
Councilor McKinnon?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, through the chair, just a comment on December meetings. December is obviously an important month for the city, as that's our budget approval month. So those meetings will be 1 week apart, where I guess we'll get the draft and discussion, final draft discussion at COW on the budget, and then the next week we'll be approving the budget. So it'll be 1 week between the COW and the council meeting during the budget approval process, which I think that can work out just fine because we'll do a lot of prep work. But again, those are just two important meetings in December.
Thank you.
Nope.
Bring motion to the 24th.
Nesbitt, any comment on that?
No comment.
Okay. We can move that forward.
And the final report this evening is presented on behalf of the Traffic Committee and is recommending council approve a bylaw to amend the no parking schedule of Chapter 150, Parking and Traffic of the city's municipal code. Traffic Committee has received a complaint about the number of accidents and near misses at the corner of Van Horn Avenue and King Street, with the complainant mentioning the cars parked along King Street and speed as issues. Traffic Committee considered a few options, including installing a four-way stop at the intersection, having the hedges cut back, and removing the parking spaces that may make it difficult for drivers to see along King Street when they're stopped on Van Horn. Following consideration of a traffic study conducted by Public Works and the historical Dryden Police Service calls for service, it was decided that a four-way stop isn't warranted at this time. And presently, the members of the Traffic Committee are recommending extending the no parking area from 9 meters from the corner of Van Horn to 23 meters along King Street only. And the extension of this no parking area should allow for clearer sight lines for those crossing King Street or turning onto it from Van Horn. Are there any questions or comments about this report?
Yeah, through the chair. So when you look at historic police reports, was there a rash of accidents? So this has all been generated by one complaint?
It's a complaint that we've had a couple of times from the same individual.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're taking away more parking for 20 to 23 meters based on one person's concerns when the police service doesn't have any data to
Mr. Nesbitt.
oh,
Looks like.
yeah.
Through the chair,
Sorry, Allison.
It's okay.
we did pull those stats with DPS, and there were recorded incidents.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would describe them as a rash, but there were some
So,
incidents.
Over how long of a period?
I think, if memory serves me correctly, it was probably a two-year period, I believe it's called, if memory serves me correctly.
Thanks, Roger.
Questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's just it's a difficult one because you want to, enhance safety wherever you can. It's probably the least intrusive way of increasing the safety at that area. I mean, putting out another stop sign, I know there's been discussion about that. I think of other places in town, for example, on the intersection of White and Duke, for example. There was an accident there last year. So there's places where it's this heavy traffic and they're trying to get across, right? So that's pedestrians there. But on this one, I can see it's vehicles traveling at a fast rate. It's a tough one. I would probably go either way with what council wants to do, because I hate to see us taking up another chunk of space that we need for downtown parking, but I also can see that it could make a difference, especially with seniors. If you're having trouble really seeing far, and you have those cars out of the way, it could make a difference.
One more question to the chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Roger, is it on the, when you're heading King Street east, is on the north side of the King Street, or the south side by the Standard Insurance, or on the other side by the church? Where exactly are they trying to extend the no parking, like the 23 meters?
So on King Street.
On King Street, but on both sides of the street, both sides? And on both sides of Van Horn? Well, a lot of people use that parking for church services, Sunday school, or Sunday morning, to come and visit City Hall, the Standard Insurance, the law offices there, Wilbur Mears.
Mr. Nesbitt.
Through the chair, we understand that those parking spaces are used, but we believe that might be part of the issue from a line of sight standpoint. The intersection is a difficult intersection to navigate when those spots are occupied by parked vehicles. And I will say that the complaint has been made more than once, and the complainant has I'll say a bird's eye view of that intersection for the most part 5 days a week. So I do believe the complaint is valid. So this was we took the time to do a traffic study. It was a week-long traffic study to try and assess whether or not a four-way stop would be warranted. And between the accident stats that we received from DPS and that traffic study, it didn't warrant a four-way stop from our assessment. But the no parking area, we felt was warranted, at least to try and make that intersection a little navigate. And it's not just vehicle traffic. There's a fair amount of pedestrian traffic at that intersection, and that's also has been flagged as an issue.
I'm just wondering, did the traffic committee look at saying maybe it's Monday to Friday only, and would that make sense? I'm just thinking, say on the weekends or evenings, people visiting family at Patricia Gardens or the church on Sunday, or would that be worthy of consideration?
Through the chair, we didn't have that discussion. And not that it wouldn't be worthy of considering. I do believe most of the issues, probably the busier times, Monday to Not to say there isn't a fair amount of traffic around there Sunday mornings.
But they're Sunday drivers.
Any other questions? I have a question for Mr. Poole. I think he's our resident expert on all things to do with streets. And the 9 meters is in line with the Highway Traffic Act.
That's right. We start the highway
We
traffic
from the
bylaw, so
intersection.
9 meters back from the
So-
intersection already.
So when we mention 20 to 23 meters in here, it doesn't have to be that extraordinary. That's more than double what it is now. It could be 15 meters or something,
It
something less.
was just decided that was a good distance
Right.
for a certain number of vehicles that you could actually be pulled out. You could see at a more of an angle. As you're looking down the street, pull out, that's hard. At least you know when a vehicle's coming, and I understand that's part of the problem with approaching vehicles from both directions. People are nosing out too far, think they can go, and there's a car actually coming. So this gives them a line of sight further down King Street in both directions, hopefully giving them an opportunity. And the people approaching the intersection are also seeing, as they're on King Street, seeing the vehicles pulling up or pedestrians coming into the intersection. So that distance is really based on what line of sight you can see.
And our hedges up front here are in compliance with height regulations.
Yeah, they are. And we can always look at things like that. The only problem is you start to get into even businesses that are, I'd say, right at the corner of intersections, like the building is built right out. I never do anything with, say, like the post office or liquor store.
Hedges
like
right
that.
across the street from that location.
Right. So if you looked at the hedges, it's really not going to help a lot. You're still going to have to park vehicles in the way as well. So you're not going to see that.
So the question is, are we moving this forward to a regular meeting in this form?
I'd like to see maybe the traffic committee just take a look before the next meeting to see if it would make sense and give a final recommendation on having it Monday to Friday, have it at, say, between 8 and 5 or 9 and 5 or whatever, and see if that might make a difference. That's my suggestion.
That's okay.
Thank you. Through the chair. And Blake, also, was there discussions with the standard or anyone, if it's employees parking there during the week, or who's actually parking there, or?
We didn't have discussions
No.
with the businesses there. No, we didn't have discussions. Per se, the parking lot is right there.
Yeah, it's full though, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
It's gonna-
But we're not controlling, we're not changing any parking down like Van Horn or on that side of the building and stuff. It's just a couple of stalls in front. And we do find sometimes the cars are close to the intersection and they should be there. But I don't know if they're employed.
Okay.
Just to note that currently there is a parking restriction, in effect, parking on the streets downtown. That includes in front of the standard, so it shouldn't be employees.
Okay.
Shouldn't be.
So do we want to refer this back to the traffic committee
I think so.
for more information?
I think that it, just from like people coming into my business, to take away more parking, it's definitely going to cause an issue. That's just my thoughts on it. I think that it should go back to the committee again and maybe look at different ideas. Like Councillor McKay is saying that the parking lot is already full between Standard and the dental office, and so where else can people park? You're going to take away 1 to 2 spaces again, or maybe more than that, I would imagine. So it's a bit of a conundrum.
Through the chair, I think I'd want to get some clear guidance from council because we have looked at this. I could throw out multiple options sitting here, but the traffic committee has looked at this, and this, other than doing nothing, this would be the recommendation that we bring forward. Now, we can, you know, bring forward a recommendation to put in a four-way stop at that intersection. We could bring forward a recommendation to reduce speed limit on that street. There are other things that could be done, but having looked at all of those, this would be what the traffic committee is recommending. So if council, you know, chooses not to implement this, then I think it's probably council making a decision to leave it as it is. Unless I'm reading this wrong.
So you, in other words, don't want it to go back to the traffic committee, you want us to decide,
We
bring it forward next regular meeting?
again, through the chair, I don't think we're gonna bring forward any other option. You know, this is what we've looked at. You know, introducing a four-way stop, you know, we feel it's not warranted. And that would introduce other complexities that we'd have to consider. It's not always the best solution.
Just wondering, Roger, do you think the hours, that's kind of inconsequential to look at again, or do you think it wouldn't make a difference, let's say, in terms of safety and convenience?
Yeah, through the chair, I think the hours would probably be doable, you know, without throwing it directly in front of the committee. I think the busy times are you know, times Monday through Friday, and that's when you see a lot of the parking spaces taken up. Outside of, say, Sunday morning might be another, but at that point there's probably less traffic on the streets and more just parked.
So I would support the motion if they could just maybe adjust the hours to saying Monday to Friday. That's my recommendation.
I have one more question. Sure. So, Blake, that's 20. If we do 23 meters, that's 75 feet from the intersection for Van Horn. 75, and on the north side, 75 feet.
Yeah,
Okay.
from the curb line.
From the curb line.
Yeah, measured from the curb line straight down.
So, what do you allow for a parking spot? 25 feet, or is that 3 on each side?
Something like that, yeah, there'd probably be, well, we already got rid of
9,
9.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
already got rid of 9, so you
So-
have 14 meters, so you may be lucky to fit 2 cars in
2.
there.
So a total
Or 2
of
trains.
8 parking spots,
Right,
potentially.
there was already one of those sides, closest to this side already was back, I think 18 meters.
Okay.
There's only like 7 spots probably.
So maybe 7, okay.
Any other comments? Just to end this, I've issued parking tickets in and around here when there's been funerals. That's not a good thing. So that's what we're facing if we're going to move it to 75 feet. But I believe that people should use due care and attention, and it should be status quo. We'll move this forward to the regular meeting. Discuss it further there. Right?
Yep.
We can move to our next report. The Chapter Corporation. Ms. Knez, we're going to go to the microphone.
Thank you, Chair. Members of Council, tonight presenting a staff report in regards to the Dryden Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, which I'll probably refer to as the nonprofit throughout the report. The recommendation tonight for this staff report is that I'm recommending that Council rescinds all current appointees to the Dryden Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board, effective immediately, with the exception of Councillor Martin McKinnon and Councillor John Carlucci. And further, that the remaining members of council be appointed as board members to the Dryden Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation with a term to serve at the pleasure of council. So a little bit of background on the nonprofit. The nonprofit, Dryden Nonprofit, was established in 1987, and it provides and operates affordable housing within the city of Dryden boundaries. It currently manages a portfolio of 66 living units in 10 separate buildings. The City of Dryden has appointed the board members of the nonprofit. As a result, the city is ultimately responsible for the housing portfolio, including any related infrastructure deficits that it may incur. In the years since the Dryden nonprofit was created, there have been many changes in the legislative landscape under which the housing is provided and in relation to which the level of government has direct oversight for the provision of social housing. The responsibility for direct provision of social housing was downloaded by the province to the municipalities back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Today, the Kenora District Services Board, otherwise known as KDSB, acts as a role of service manager. The KDSB, as a service manager, completes operational and capital plan reviews to ensure all housing providers comply with the legislation, operating agreements, and any local rules in place. In 2016, Housing Services Corporation, otherwise known as HSC in this report, which is a non-profit organization that's committed to ensuring Ontario residents have access to safe and affordable housing, was contracted by the Kenora District Services Board to complete an in-depth analysis of the financial viability of housing projects within the KDSB's responsibility. The HSC financial analysis looked at the financial viability of the housing projects before, at, and after the end of operating agreements and the current impacts of mortgages and debentures. They looked at each project separately to allow the service managers and housing providers to determine which projects are financially stable, which projects will need the most considerable amount of subsidy. So last year in 2019, the Housing Services Corporation performed a review of the financial viability of the Dryden nonprofit in its present state and into the future. The scope of the viability study focused on the financial and capital position of each of the nonprofit housing portfolios at present and over the next 10 years as mortgages expire. The analysis also considered the current building condition reports, or BCAs, in order to understand and project the extent of capital needs and unfunded liabilities that may exist. In order to give the city additional context, the analysis also looked at the ability of the nonprofit to leverage any assets to borrow against and develop new housing units within the community. In 2018-2019, KDSB had procured building condition audits, as I mentioned before, for all their housing stock, including the Dryden nonprofit buildings. Using the BCA data, HSC has analyzed the long-term capital needs of the Dryden nonprofit housing stock in order to provide the KDSB with further information with which to better understand the future viability of the buildings in the nonprofit portfolio. To fully understand the expected costs and performance of this housing stock, analysis of the current projected building conditions, the total and remaining useful life of the buildings, and the expected financial needs were all calculated. The KDSB requested HSC to look at 3 separate scenarios. The first scenario was basically a status quo scenario where there were no changes made to the operations or the governance of the organization. Coming out of that review, it was apparent that the organization is unable to generate a positive net income. Its ability to leverage equity to borrow is limited, and the required capital renewal obligations continue to increase to a significant balance. The second scenario was looking at changing all the rent geared to income units to average market rental units. So this scenario was intended to demonstrate the financial benefits gained if the RGI units were changed to affordable housing units. The scenario really, ignores the availability challenges that would bring, and it also ignores the actual legislation that governs the RGI under the Housing Services Act. The KDSB, even looking at this scenario, the KDSB would still be required to continue with its current subsidy levels and permit the nonprofit to retain all the annual operating surpluses in order to address the accumulated capital deficit. The third scenario that was looked at was really a scenario that looked at transferring the nonprofit assets over to the KDSB. This scenario demonstrated that the KDSB, even though maintaining existing RGI units while committing to reinvesting all operational savings, the portfolio would still struggle financially without additional levies from the municipalities in play. But if the portfolio or the assets were transferred to the KDSB, then the RGI units could be moved to a market rent structure, and this would actually bring the nonprofit into financial sustainability. So the viability review that was done, it demonstrated that the nonprofit housing stock is vulnerable and it will require significant financial investment by the KDSB in order to offer housing that's suitable, adequate, and in good shape for the tenants. And again, the analysis looked at it from a 10-year standpoint. It also suggests that the nonprofit capital reserves are not adequate to meet those capital needs over that time frame. So given the city's current affordable housing needs and council's direction through our strat plan to support opportunities to increase the current housing portfolio within the city, and together with the ongoing need to continue to review areas under the city's purview for opportunities where efficiencies can be achieved, it is recommended that Dryden City Council take on the role of the Dryden Nonprofit Board for the purposes of further reviewing the financial viability of Dryden Nonprofit and to further consider the different management structures that have been proposed. The Dryden Municipal Nonprofit Housing Board Chair has been advised of this, and he's here tonight. And all board members will be advised as to council's final decision. If there's any questions, I'll do my best.
Questions?
More of a comment, just as you're talking and as I'm reviewing those three options again, I write down scale, the opportunity, the advantages of number 3, scale, leverage, flexibility, and viability. Again, in terms of financial, I mean, I see those as the strong points. So it's well thought out, it's well planned, and I have no problem with moving forward with this.
Councillor Bush.
Mr. Chair, Roger, is this a simple process of doing as Denora's housing to speed?
Norm, you're
You may
really...
have to repeat that, Councillor Bush.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
No, yeah.
Now we
Now we
can.
can.
My question is whether this, that's under number 3, is similar to folks went through with respect to transition care to housing over to KPSB.
I'll leave it to you, Mr. Nesbitt, if you could just say that. We're having trouble
Councillor
with
Bush,
your audio.
you're breaking up and it's hard to understand the question.
Okay, well, something must have changed here because nothing's changed here, so.
Try it one more time.
Just lean in and try it again.
Walk slow. Is this process similar to what Kenora went through with their social housing and their transition, their social housing PSP?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so after this report, and council still had to make a decision about whether or not to transfer those units, would that be correct?
That would be the next step.
Okay, and what sort of timeline in the process for coming to that decision step would you have in mind?
Currently, I'm anticipating March.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
If I could, so I understand this again, the RGI units, the rent geared income units, that may change to market rental units. But those market rental units will still be available as affordable housing units for people who essentially don't have an income. Is that
Correct.
So it will not create a problem with, a further problem with housing in our community. It may prove to resolve some of the issues.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor McKinnon. And as a matter of fact, RGI units in our community are heavily subsidized through the municipal levy that we provide to the services board. If there are other provincial programs, funding programs that can be used to create affordable housing outside of RGI units. So the proposal would be to move some of those Dryden nonprofit housing units to market rent, and then leverage provincial dollars to then make those affordable to the tenants that are currently there.
Through ODSP or some other?
Yeah, there's various programs that KDSB can leverage.
No.
So if we can move this forward to our regular meeting. Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt.
Thank you.
Now, we have two notices of motion this evening, which will be presented and discussed at the February 24th meeting of council. For the information of the public, I will ask the clerk to read these motions.
Okay, the first motion, first notice of motion is from Mayor Wilson, and as stated by the chair, this will be on the agenda of the 24th of February's council meeting, and the subject is Northwestern Health Unit levy increases. And there is a long portion of the notice of motion. Do you want me to?
Well, is that available online?
It is available online. And anybody could read that there. It's attached to the agenda there. I'm sure the mayor will be reading it all to us on the 24th, so if anybody would like to read it in the interim, it's available online, or you can print a copy of it for them at the administration office.
Mr. Nesbitt is, I understand you're familiar with the content of this notice of motion. Is it something that we should be looking to, for legal advice, to have that legal advice here or distributed before the 24th of February to each councillor?
We have a legal opinion, and it has been distributed to council.
Thank you.
Okay, the second notice of motion is from Councillor Bush. Again, will be presented at the February 24th council meeting. The subject is authorization of remote participation. The motion will read that as per section 259C of the Municipal Act 2001, council authorized the remote participation of Councillor Bush at the March 2020 regular meeting of council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we can move on to announcements. Mayor Wilson.
Sure. I may as well give you a primer on the 24th or whatever date that is. So my mayor's remarks, I just wanted to mention that last month that Councillor Martin McKinnon and CAO Roger Nesbitt and myself traveled to Saskatchewan First Nations to attend a consultation that included First Nations, municipalities, Ministry of Health, and the Northwestern Health Unit. And the goal was to share ideas on how we could all partner more effectively together to bring better health care to Northwestern Ontario. And I'd just like to share three main points our delegation shared at this gathering. I think it's important for the public to know. One, healthcare should not be the responsibility of municipal governments. It has always been the joint responsibility of both the federal and provincial governments up until the 90s, with municipal governments playing a very small role. The province downloaded much of their responsibility onto municipalities in 1998, which was simply a power move made at the expense of every town and city in the province. Our regional health unit is now compounding the problem created by the province, with expectations that municipalities will dole out extra cash to pay for the health programs. The federal government has not lived up to its responsibilities of providing health care to First Nations, leaving it to the province and the municipalities to fill the gap. Similarly, as I just said, the Northwest Health Unit cannot expect municipalities to absorb the kinds of tax levy increases they're trying to foist on local taxpayers. And three, two things must change at senior government levels. One, the province of Ontario needs to take back responsibility from municipal governments for the cost of social services, leaving us, the municipalities, to focus on our core strengths of road, sidewalk repair, maintenance, fire, safety, garbage collection, disposal, street lighting, parks, etc. And I recognize that this won't happen overnight, but this should be the trajectory that they embark on. And then secondly, the role for the federal government. They cannot rely on municipalities to shoulder their legal and moral responsibilities any longer, but must come to the table with workable strategies that benefit all Canadians, and particularly in Northwestern Ontario. And I am actually optimistic that positive change at our health unit and both levels of senior government will come about as a result of consultations such as last month's, but we must persevere and not become discouraged. This council's goal must be to continue to fight for our citizens to be able to continue to afford living in their homes as long as they're able, to have safe, affordable water to drink, clean and safe sporting facilities and neighborhoods for families to enjoy, excellent fire protection, well-maintained roads and sidewalks, efficient garbage pickup, recycling and disposal, and so on. The province and the federal government can then focus on the things they collect our sales and income taxes for, and I specifically single out social services here. We will partner with senior governments where we can, but we have neither the scale nor the expertise to efficiently and effectively manage those types of services. Thank you.
Just wanted to say that at our little, actually it wasn't a chamber meeting, but a meeting with committee member, Michelle, that another Michelle, that we are going to go ahead with another Win This Space coming up. As you know, the last Win This Space was very successful. The young lady who did win that contest has now moved into a larger space. So this year we're going to actually spread it out. The last time we did it, which was 2 years ago, we were specific for it to be downtown. This year we're going to actually allow it to encompass the whole city of Dryden from what we say sign to sign. So that is soon going to be coming out, and so look forward to seeing that happening. Other than that, still would like to thank Public Works for doing such an amazing job of keeping our streets clean. It's been so awesome to go downtown. I really noticed it this year as opposed to a couple of years back. The snowbanks, there's none. So that is awesome work, and I appreciate that you're taking care of that for us. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
Councillor McKay.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank the staff at the Holiday Inn. Would like to thank Tyler Peacock, our EDO, and the staff of the city for helping us sponsor a Friday night and Saturday afternoon swim at our municipal pool for our hotel guests. Fortunately, we had to close down the hotel pool, and consequently, we had a lot of rightfully so disappointed hockey parents and children. And with the help of the city staff, I think we made our guests stay at least a little more enjoyable. So I got to really commend Tyler. He came up with the idea of the swimming. He was very helpful. So thank you.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you. I had the opportunity of representing the city in Silicon at the Kenora District Municipal Association a week or so back. Their theme was Journey to Green, and they had some excellent speakers in there on climate change. In particular, a fellow named Graham Saunders from Lakehead University in Thunder Bay. He explained about longer growing seasons and why forest fires are becoming more prevalent in our area. They had an excellent presentation on the experimental lakes. And we also sat through a really good presentation from Shannon Bach, who's the field officer for the Ontario Fire Office Fire Marshal's office. I'll get it right eventually. And she talked on the Fire Marshal's office's response to disasters, natural disasters, and that was quite an interesting presentation to see how thin they are stretched sometimes. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize a couple of citizens in our community, and that would be Brad Coles and Thomas Ledoux, who recently became life members of the Kinsman Club of Canada. That's a quite prestigious award for those two gentlemen, and they have spent literally thousands of hours in our community through the Kinsman programming, and you never hear or see them, but they do wonderful work in our community. And I'd also like to recognize the Kinsman Club of Canada's 100th anniversary, and they've been around a long time in our community, so I'm sure we'll see a flag raising out front there, Mayor, shortly. So, thank you.
Through the chair. Well, I used to be a Kinsman, so that was years ago. But anyway, we had our policy meeting this past Wednesday, and just sort of cleaned up some few policies that were outstanding. Brought a few together, made it more streamlined, so that'll be coming to council shortly. We worked on another policy on council conference attendance, which we're working on the details of, which will be coming to the committee again. We revised the travel policy a bit, I think we did, on the meal expenditures, and again, that'll be coming to council in March, April. And we're looking at amending the electronic meeting policy in May or in April, somewhere in that range. So it'll be coming to council for discussion. And these all policies are related to council, may or not to staff, so just so everybody's aware of that. That's it. Thanks.
Councillor Bush.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I don't think the mic's working that well. I have no further comments this evening. Thank you.
You could sign it to us.
Somebody might interpret it incorrectly.
Yeah, be careful of the signing.
Thank you, Councillor Bush. For myself, I just want to congratulate all the organizers and certainly the officials and the arena staff for a great Little Bands hockey tournament this past week. We were at the opening ceremonies, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday. And certainly the players, the fans, and the families for coming to our community. So well done to everyone. I have a media release, and this is from the Northwest Health Unit, something that's currently a concern to all of us, and I'll read it out. As the novel coronavirus continues to spread globally, the Northwestern Health Unit continues to monitor the situation internationally so that the people in this area can have the most up-to-date information. At this time, the virus is not posing a risk in our area, and the most important risk factor for this virus is travel to an affected area. Northwest Health Unit is working closely with area partners to monitor the situation and prepare for the time when the 2019 novel coronavirus might show up in our area. The Health Unit has set up a web page where public can get current and accurate information at www.nwhu.on.ca. Although the risk of the 2019 coronavirus locally is extremely low, Donna Stanley, manager of the Infectious Disease Program at Northwest Health Unit, suggests some ways to prevent getting sick from any virus. Washing your hands and avoiding touching your face are important to prevent any viral infection. If you are unwell, please stay home to prevent infecting others. She continues, influenza remains the top viral concern in the region at this time. If you have not received the flu shot yet, it's not too late to do so. Flu shots are available from some local pharmacies, healthcare providers, and the Northwest Health Unit. And with that, let's move any further. Councillor McKay.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Price, that this meeting do hereby adjourn.
All in favor? Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, folks.